Hey everyone! Welcome to week 2 of English 3010 online. So in this video, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping with you guys in terms of what's going on for Project 1 and where you are, where you should be. I'd like to introduce you to our peer mentor for the semester. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the Elizabeth Wardle reading that you guys are going to tackle this week. So let's get right into it. First item of housekeeping. If you haven't done it already, set up your interview. Yes, do it now. Do it like yesterday. That's one of the things that needs to get done this week. So it could be a Skype interview, it could be face-to-face, it could be even via email, although that's not the best, but we'll take what we can get because what we're really after is the expertise of this professional in the field that you've identified. So make sure that you are on top of that with emails, phone calls, or if you know this person via your everyday life, make sure that you have talked to them and set aside time this week to talk to them formally in terms of your interview. Okay, so having said that, let me put a drum roll. And I'm going to introduce you to our peer mentor for this semester. Ta-da! Meet Rayanne, our amazing peer mentor. I wish that I had thought ahead to have her here in person so that we could both be on this geeky video together, just being super excited about English 3010. But I have the next best thing. She has created for you guys a peer mentor profile. So as you can see, it's got her beautiful picture and a little bit about herself, which I'm not going to go over for her. You can read her own words and check out what she had to say to introduce herself to you guys. Just a note, you can find her peer mentor profile right here on our Blackboard dashboard, right underneath my instructor profile. So it's just a little thing that Rayanne and I both did so that we could both introduce ourselves to you and so that you could have a reference about us, I guess. So that's Rayanne, and she'll be popping into our class in this Blackboard site via announcements. She may set up discussion boards. As you can see on this profile, she's made her email address available to you. She was even talking about doing a GroupMe chat. So take advantage of Rayanne's expertise. She has taken English 3010. She's also already been a peer mentor for English 3010, and she is so psyched to help support you guys in your experience in this class. Okay. So I think that does it for housekeeping stuff. The last thing I wanted to do was I want to walk us through our weekly tasks and assignments. So as you can see, I clicked over here in our Blackboard site on weekly tasks and assignments. Super creative name, I know. And we're going to go into the Project 1 folder. And we got to scroll down, remember? We're scrolling down. So beneath the whole Project 1 assignment, we find our weekly activities. Now, looking at my needs grading folder in my Blackboard is really encouraging. It looks like most everybody found your week 1 activities, no problem. Those of you who needed a couple instructions have already emailed me, I think. And I have a lot of blogs to grade. I'm really stoked about that. So that was week 1 in the books. Now we're on to week 2. So let's open this up, and I just want to go over what's going on this week because this week is going to be a little bit more self-directed. I think I mentioned in last week's video that week 1 is very heavy with lots of blogs and project builders because we were laying the foundation to get a lot of stuff crammed in together for this project. This week, we're a little lighter on the nitty-gritty sort of micromanaging assignments because this week we're trying to continue developing your own understanding of your chosen discourse community, which we learned last week is really just a fancy way to say your chosen field or your major, the thing that you want to do after college, the thing that you're training for to become a part of. What is that community? What is that discourse community? So this week is the week, as we mentioned, to set up your interview with somebody who is already a part of that discourse community. So your weekly assignments here: watch the week 2 video, which you're already doing, so good for you. And we really only have one super kind of academic reading this week, which is this Elizabeth Wardle piece, Identity, Authority, and Learning to Write in New Workplaces. And then there is a link to a sample Project 1 in the resources folder. Now, I'm going to show you the resources folder. I did it in our syllabus day video, but I'm going to show it to you right now. After that, I'm going to trust that you guys can know where it is. So anything that is linked in the resources folder after today, I'm not going to go there and show it to you. But if we go over here and click on resources, we will pull up a bunch of stuff, right? I talked on syllabus day about, hey, there's all these citation refreshers, ideas for interview questions, and down here at the very bottom is a folder full of student samples from past English 3010 classes. So when you go inside here, you'll see that there is a link right here to a Project 1 that was really successful in a past 3010 class. And if you click on it, you'll notice that it opens up a new tab and it's going to show you a website, because what we're doing, remember, is we're making a research guide online. So if you take a second to poke around on this site, you can see the kinds of things that are on a really successful Project 1 site. So I'm not going to poke around here, but you can. And I'm going to head back into our weekly tasks folder and kind of continue giving the overview of the week. So going back into Project 1, weekly tasks. And since we're on week 2, once it finishes loading, okay, I promise I will try my best not to sing on these videos. It could get really serious. Okay, so we talked about watching the video, we talked about reading, and then here's kind of the self-directed part of this week, is that it's follow your research plan. And when I say research plan, I'm hearkening back to blog number 1, where I asked you to kind of sketch out a plan, like what would you need to do to find out about your chosen discourse community. This week, do that. Do the thing. Conduct your interview for sure. Look up anything that you need to look up. Follow any leads online to different, I don't know if there are professional conferences or different professional websites that you need to check out. You definitely need to be flexible with this research process, right? If something's not working, scrap it, try something else. If you need different keywords, scrap your old keywords or add to them or use your Boolean search terms. Conduct your interviews, explore the readings and journals on your own. Okay, I really gotta stop singing. But you'll notice that in the weekly schedule, that's like a huge part of the homework for this week. Complete research tasks, your own research tasks. And in terms of things to write this week, there's just one blog 3, which is a weekly reading response. I want you to think about the Wardle piece and the student website that you looked at and see if you can see any connections or tensions there. Now, Project Builder 3, I have it set here to sort of shoot to do it by Friday. But I understand interviews can be a slippery fish. And if you don't totally get it done by Friday, that's okay. Because remember, everything is absolutely due by Sunday midnight. So just kind of gauge your time as you're going through the week, because Project Builder 3 is simply a summary of your interviews and your secondary research so far. And that's a so far. Even if you're not totally done, you just want to summarize what you've done this week. The third thing to write this week is your first reflection journal. So those are 3 kind of smallish pieces, but you can see how we've got kind of an open playing field this week to be working towards Project 1 and putting some of the pieces in place for that. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is I want to talk about this reading by Elizabeth Wardle. And I have it pulled up here. Since it's linked in your weekly activities folder, you can find it real easy. So something that's going to be interesting about this Wardle piece is that you can see, even if you look through the framing the reading, it's very obvious that Wardle is also talking about discourse communities, just like Swales. She's going to be building on the concept of discourse communities, and actually she's pulling in another researcher's set of terms to sort of create a picture for what's happening in a particular discourse community that she's researching. So the first thing that you want to think about is, what are these new terms? One of the main things that she's going to talk about here is Lev and Wenger's frame. They are talking about activity theory in a particular way, and they also are going to consider identity and authority as part of this new activity theory. So when I say activity theory or an activity system, this triangle here is the sort of representation of an activity system. So the subject would be the writer or the rhetor. We've got tools to accomplish our purposes. Your object, your motive, your outcome is sort of over here on the other side of the triangle. Then there's other complications, right? So you may already be noticing that this triangle is a little more complicated than our discourse community circle with a triangle of the rhetorical situation in it that we talked about last week. It's okay. It's meant to be. This is a fluid concept, and as we understand the ways that we communicate and the effects and the things that press on us as we're trying to get some communication done, we all know it's more complicated than just, I want to say this thing to this person. Here, I will say it. But that's certainly a part of it. Activity systems and activity theory complicates the rhetorical situation as we know it and brings in a couple new variables. So this activity system, it's kind of like the rhetorical situation, but broader with more variables sort of rolled into it. Now, Wardle here, she's going to talk about how identity and authority become a really important part of this triangle, this communication system. And identity and authority, I hope that you had some little ding-a-ling-a-ling bells ringing in your brain, that they made you think of ethos, because they are very similar and they kind of combine together to create a sense of ethos within an activity system. Now, this activity system is what Wardle's going to use instead of rhetorical situation. And then she's bringing in Wenger's term of communities of practice, which she's using here kind of in place of discourse communities. But you'll notice community. We're still talking about the community that is surrounding particular events, purposes, communications, sharing a bunch of projects and goals in common, right? We could break down that definition in a lot of different ways. So far, we've seen the Swales definition, and here we're looking at the Wenger definition. Discourse communities and communities of practice, though, are very similar. So here's the thing, is that Wardle is going to point out that identity within a community of practice or within a discourse community depends on these three things here. Engagement, which is basically, do I have a sense of common cause with the people in this community? Can I work on this stuff with these people? Imagination, which is kind of casting forward, right? Like, do I see myself in this community in the future? Do I see a role for myself? And alignment, which kind of has to do with when there are tensions that arise. If personal beliefs and the goals of the community come into conflict, if I'm able to resolve them, I can align myself with this community of practice. So those are some of the things that she's hitting on here with identity, but Wardle also talks about how this concept of authority works within a community of practice. Authority, basically, kind of think of it here like, how well is your communication working? It's this constant, evolving, changing relationship between the communicator or the rhetor and the audience. Are people getting what you're saying? Are you contributing something useful to the community that the community recognizes and is going to integrate? Or are you saying stuff that's like, wait, what are you saying that makes no sense in this community? So your amount of authority in this sense is really kind of like your effectiveness at communicating. And also, we should note that it has to do with power. So we've all experienced the person in power who isn't effectively communicating, but they're still in power, so they get to just keep being confusing. It's kind of a balancing act, right? So the less power you have, the more effective your communication has to be to contribute to your authority within the community. The more power you have, the less you have to really depend on your communication being effective. But either way, they're interwoven, and it's a dynamic, shifting situation, how much authority you have in a community. Now, towards the end of this piece, sort of the second half of Wardle's chapter here, she's pointing to a case study where she worked with this person named Alan. She used some pretty common research methods within my discourse community of writing studies. She did some ethnographic style observation, she did interviews, she did discourse analysis on all those emails. She also did some survey work. And all of this was sort of in response to this question, which was, why am I having trouble? Alan was very frustrated about his role in this humanities department, right? And as you read through, you can learn more about Alan and his trials and tribulations, as it were. Now, it might seem at first blush that this second half of the chapter is like a cautionary tale. And I suppose it kind of is in a sense, but I think one of the main take-homes here is just acknowledging the role that identity and authority play when you're trying to become a part of a discourse community or a community of practice. Also, there's a great paper, it's pretty famous within my discipline, it's called Novice versus Expert. And in it, the writers talk about how if you have the mindset of a novice, if you have the mindset of somebody who's new to a situation, and if you understand that you have something to learn, very oftentimes you end up learning it, which sounds quite obvious, but especially tricky when it comes to writing. We have a lot of bad habits or just ways that we know or have learned about how to write, what good writing is. Right? Remember, good writing is dependent on the context, dependent on the discourse community. And so the more we can free ourselves of a hard and fast way to write and open ourselves up to learning what we need to learn, if we look at ourselves more as novices rather than as experts, that is when we can be more successful in learning new ways of writing. So learning to write. One of the things that I really love that Wardle says as she kind of brings this argument to a close is that learning to write, she says it right here, it's at the top of the last paragraph. Learning to write in new communities entails more than learning discrete sets of skills or improving cognitive abilities. It is a process. It involves communities, it involves being able to identify power dynamics, create relationships, assert the appropriate amount of authority, and yes, write sentences and paragraphs in the appropriate way that the discourse community calls for. So read through this, get those little bits that I totally glossed over here, but hopefully my little summary will kind of help bring the piece into focus. And take a look at this piece in terms of Project One. How is this useful, helpful, relevant to the work that we're doing on researching our own discourse communities? All right. As always, shoot me an email if you need anything from me or have questions. I'll be in my office for office hours on Tuesday. Rayanne is available as your peer mentor. And we look forward to working with you guys this week.